So we are in chapter 49 out of 50 chapters. It's been since September of 24. So whatever that works out to, however many weeks that is, pretty good clip. It can seem like a long time, but that's a pretty good clip to go through the 50 chapters of Genesis. So I like that idea, finishing a book like this within 2 years. Luke, Acts, Matthew, those kinds of books, finishing them within a couple of years. So looks like we're going to be able to do that. And we are in the middle of the end, the final blessings or pronouncements, if you will. They're really more like prophecies. What will come to pass? Statements for each of the tribes from Jacob down to his sons. And we got to, we didn't quite get to Joseph last week. Of course, the highlights were the two, what amount to curses. Some of them are just descriptive, where Jacob just tells something that's true about the brother or the tribe that will be. But then a few of them are virtually curses, or at least one of them. The Reuben one is an insult. It's a chastisement, but there's no, it's like he's been waiting his whole life to tell Reuben what he really thinks. Although my hunch is that Reuben already heard it. Mm-hmm. Reuben, of course, was the one who had relations with Bilhah, who was Rachel's maidservant. But then he curses Simeon and Levi because of what they did in Shechem when they killed all the males. And that will come to pass for both of those tribes. Neither will get a tribal allotment out of it. And then Joseph gets the second longest statement. And it's pretty clear that all the others will, but whereas before, all of the brothers were to bow down to Joseph, which is still an issue in Genesis and will be to the end. It will be obvious that the rest of the tribes will bow down to Judah, which they will, at least until the divided kingdom, after Solomon passes. After that, Judah becomes a shadow of its former self. But anyway, we are on Joseph.
Can we go back to Levi for a minute? It's interesting here, though you're right, he did not get an allotment. Still, there's grace found because Levi became the supposed spiritual leader. I mean, Moses was a Levite. Aaron, his brother, was Levite, and so the priestly line passed through them, and the Levites themselves helped with the temple ministry. So there was grace.
They were the guardians of, they will become, or they are supposed to have been they were supposed to have been the guardians of Israelite worship and service, and the gatekeepers of Israelite worship and service. And that will not really come to pass until David, and the worship is centralized when the tabernacle is moved to Jerusalem. At that point, under Zadok, which was David's high priest, then the Levi will finally, the tribe of Levi, the Levitical priesthood, will finally take up the gatekeeping that they were supposed to all along. But up until then, they did not, and it was utterly corrupt up until David. And you see that clearly at the beginning of 1 Samuel, the priesthood and desecration of Shiloh at the end of the Judges. Anyway, that takes us to Joseph and his blessing. He is the longest. He's already had the blessing of the two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, but Jacob isn't done yet. And so he gives this statement about Joseph, Joseph being the 11th son. So this is saved for the 11th son. Joseph is a fruitful bow by a spring. What's a bow? I should have looked this up.
I think they might call it a buff of a tree branch, like a evergreen tree branch.
His branches run over the wall. And here we go. The archers bitterly attacked him, shot at him, and harassed him severely. Yet his bow remained unmoved. His arms were made agile by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob. From there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. By the God of your father who will help you, by the Almighty who will bless you with blessings of heaven above. Sounds very much like the blessing on Jacob from Isaac. Blessings of the deep that crouches beneath, blessings of the breast and of the womb, the blessings of your father are mighty beyond the blessings of my parents. Up to the bounties of the everlasting hills, may they be on the head of Joseph and on the brow of him who was set apart from his brothers. So what's interesting to me about this passage is that I think we finally know what Joseph really thought about what happened. I mean, what Jacob really thought about what happened to Joseph. You remember in the original story, the brothers threw him into a cistern of some kind and then pulled him on, probably with the leadership of Judah, pulled him out of there and sold him to the Midianites who were on their way to Egypt. And then they took his coat, put some blood on it, took it back to the father, their own father, and said, hey, we found this. Tell us whether it's your son's. About as cold as it can be. He said, yep, a wild beast has torn my son Joseph to death. And then he mourned for him and he couldn't be comforted. So, is the guile, is the deception successful? And then there's the statement when the brothers have to go back to Egypt because Simeon is there because he's been taken captive. And they want to take Benjamin back because that's the only way they can get food. That's the only way they can get back to the administrator of Egypt, who is Joseph. You got to bring Benjamin back to me. And Joseph says, no, you have bereaved me of my children, plural. Simeon and Joseph are gone, and now you would take Benjamin. So he clearly implicates the brothers, not just in the death of, in what's happened to Simeon, which really wasn't their fault, but in what's happened to Joseph. That's the implication, because they have bereaved him of his children, 2 of them. So that he doesn't trust, no, I'm not sending Benjamin up with you. I don't want the same thing to happen to Benjamin that happened to Joseph and Simeon. So no. Well, now we're at the end of the book. And he's got this statement about what happened to Joseph at the top of that screen right there, verse 23. The archers bitterly attacked him. Who were the archers?
Brothers.
I don't know how you read that other than the brothers. And he brackets it, beginning and end. The last statement, whom who was set apart from his brothers. So it seems to me, when I read this, Jacob knew that the brothers were responsible. So, yeah, there it is. Anyway, I mean, there's more than one way to read it, but that's the way I'm reading it. Anyway, we already talked about the blessing on Joseph because he's going to get a double portion. Both Manasseh and Ephraim now will take his place as heirs, and we will end up with 12 tribal allotments. Remove Levi, remove Joseph, add back Manasseh and Ephraim, and you end up with, well, I'm not going to go look at it again. We already did that. Plus, I don't have time now that I wanted to talk about space so much in the last few weeks. So that's Joseph. Praise, honor, and everything. You can almost see the blessing of Jacob from Isaac being passed directly down to Joseph. You got these, the mighty one, by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob. He bless you, blessings of heaven above. And then there's the blessings of your father are mighty, mighty beyond the blessings of my parents. So it's like a double portion of blessings that I got. That's what I want to pass on to Joseph. Then there's Benjamin. Not sure about this one. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning devouring the prey, and at evening dividing the spoil. Benjamin is silent in the narrative of Genesis. We don't know anything about him. He's a foil. He's not a participant. He's there for other people. He's there to move the plot along, but he doesn't do anything. There are no stories about Benjamin in the entire book of Genesis that I can remember. But so
He does become a foreign character now. Look at Judges, the fact that the Benjamin, that they almost destroyed all the males and almost lost the tribe.
If this is a prophecy, a prediction of what a prophecy of what will come to pass, Israel almost destroyed itself at the end of the book of Judges,
Yeah.
but probably far earlier in the history of Israel than that point in time, or then at the end of the period of the Judges. That story probably happened a lot earlier in the period of the Judges, but it was located at the end. But they very nearly got exterminated. The other tribes, they almost exterminated the tribe of Benjamin over an event that we're not going to get into. And then it leads to the desecration of Shiloh, and it's the near crumbling. It would have crumbled. That's the way the book of Judges ends, with the near destruction of the entire 12. You can't call it a nation. The 12 tribes. They very nearly crumbled, and that's when Samuel will arrive on the scene and basically save the nation. But anyway, Benjamin was the first. They would have been destroyed, and they almost were. There's 400 men left or something like that.
Interestingly, there again, the first king of Israel came from the tribe of Benjamin.
And then Saul will be a Benjamite. There's another Saul who's a Benjamite in the Bible.
And of course,
Who was
King
a-
Saul may have fit the description of a ravenous wolf himself. So,
Paul was of the tribe of Benjamin as well in the
Yes.
New Testament.
and before he was converted, he himself was a ravenous wolf.
So that takes us through the, I don't know what you want to call them. Some of them are blessings, some of them are cursings, and some of them are just statements of, this is what you are, descriptive, like this one here on Benjamin.
Basically, Jacob is just telling him what he thought about his kids. And
Yep.
It's oh, it must have been hard to hear.
So now the book is going to end with 2 deaths in Egypt. First is Jacob's. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel. So we have this national statement of nationality of the future. It's a very full-grown statement that's really not there yet. They're still just a tribal, they're still just a family clan. They're going to go through a period of the Exodus, and then they'll go through a period where there will be a slave people. Then they will be a tribal confederation of the 12 tribes during the period of the Judges and Joshua. And then finally, at the end, let's call it at the middle of 2 Samuel, they will finally be a nation under David, unless you want to give credit to Saul for that. So it's a long time in the future, but the statement is right there, the 12 tribes of Israel. This is what their father said to them as he blessed them, blessing each one with the blessing suitable to him. Then he commanded them and said to them, I am to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, to the east of Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought with the field from Ephron the Hittite. Twice told statement about Ephron the Hittite. And I think in the original story, that's labored too, that they bought that land from the Hittite to possess as a burying place. So you can see the sort of dispossession of the Hittites, foreshadowed in that cave, in that land being turned over to Abraham. There they buried Abraham and Sarah, his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah and his wife. And there I buried Leah. The field and the cave that is in it were bought from the Hittites. Third mention of the Hittites. When Jacob finished commanding his sons, he drew up his feet into the bed, breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. That's their euphemism for death. The Hittites are interesting because they will hang around a long time in the history of Israel. And there's a very famous Hittite mentioned in the story of David, a very important Hittite, a very honorable Hittite, Uriah, who was the husband of Bathsheba, who David took, and he murdered Uriah the Hittite. So you have the great King David of the tribe of Judah presented as this act of evil, this shameful act of evil that he committed against a Hittite who was portrayed as honorable. And it's this remarkable inversion of the biblical story right there. Very honest. The Bible's very honest about this stuff. So that,
There's something that's popped in my mind as we, I'm going back to the whole thing about the Simeon and Levi, and think about when this is being written and when the people are first hearing it. It's the nation of Israel that's left the Exodus. They probably already been told about the fact that the Levites are being set aside as God's own people. They're not having an inheritance in the land. And so this is explaining to them, in a sense, why that is.
very, very much, Genesis is it's a book of beginnings. And it's a book, it's a lot of different beginnings, origins. It's a bunch of origin stories, but it tells stories which explain why the nation was to be what it was.
Yep.
And you see that over and over and over again. And we talked about that all the way through. So that's the death of Jacob. So for all that, Jacob's story started. Oops. Wow.
What chapter 26 or so? Well, I mean, he's born before that.
Let's take a look here real quick. That's it?
Might be.
So he was born in chapter 25. Half the book of Genesis is dedicated to the story of Joseph. I mean, it's Jacob. It is the detail with which he is treated is amazing. And Joseph himself will get 13 chapters. So he got far more text than Abraham did. He got more text than Abraham and Isaac put together. He got everything from Genesis 1 to 25. That's how much text he got, 25 and following. That's how important Jacob is to the story of Israel.
And the interesting thing is Isaac had the longest life and he gets the least amount of text.
So yeah, their priorities are not ours necessarily. We would want to know more about some other things, but they want, remember what the purpose is, like I just said. This is a story of origins. This is the family history. So yes, of course, it's the 12 tribes of Israel. It's the 12 tribes of Jacob. It's 12 sons of Jacob. So that's the story of Genesis. That's the story of Genesis. Genesis isn't there to explain how the world was created. The story of how the world was created was there to explain other things. It serves a purpose in the larger narrative. And that narrative is eventually going to lead to Jacob, and it's going to go on and on and on in the story of Israel throughout the rest of the old. What started in Genesis 25 with the birth of Jacob will continue now uninterrupted until Malachi, and then uninterrupted, interrupted by several hundred years into the life of Jesus.
Yeah.
All of biblical history from Genesis chapter 25 on is the story of the family of Jacob. Okay, then Joseph fell on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. So the physicians embalmed Israel. 40 days were required for it, for that is how many are required for embalming. And the Egyptians wept for him 70 days. So this is a period of national mourning for Egypt as well. What's interesting about this is, remember the statement from Joseph chapters ago, when he was finally succeeding under Pharaoh. Yahweh has caused me to forget all my troubles and my family. That was his statement earlier. I never want to think about him again. I just want to forget my family. I don't want anything to do with him. Nothing. And now, a few chapters later, 7 or 8, I don't know how many, you have this statement. This is the greatest family reunion in the history of the Bible right here. It's unbelievable. When the days of weeping for him were past, so this is a state funeral. The 70 days is official. This is how we do these things. So he's being honored. Jacob is a slave. Joseph's a slave. Everybody related to Joseph is a slave. Jacob's a slave. They all have slave status. And so this is what they're doing on behalf of the slave family. When the days of weeping for him were past, Joseph spoke to the household of Pharaoh, saying, if now I have found favor in your eyes, which he has, please speak in the ears of Pharaoh, saying, my father made me swear, saying, I am about to die. In my tomb that I have hewed out for myself in the land of Canaan, there shall you bury me. Now therefore let me please go up and bury my father, then I will return. And Pharaoh said, I'm going to pay attention to my notes. At least I say I am. 13. And Pharaoh answered, go up and bury your father as he made you swear. So Joseph went up to bury his father. With him went up all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his household, all the elders of the land of Egypt, as well as the household of Joseph, his brothers, and his father's household. So this is a state procession. They could not do more on behalf of Jacob. Only their children, their flocks, and their herds were left in the land of Goshen. Now stop right there. Just reminding you of something?
Exodus.
There's this prefiguring. This is over and over and over again in the book of Genesis.
No, should it be left?
Where there's these foreshadowing elements that presage. How do you say that? Presage, is that the right word? What's the right word, Nathan? You go to school. Anticipate the story of the Exodus. And a good example of that was like I've said, is the destruction of the males in Shechem. And after that, Jacob said that you will, now that you've done this, the inhabitants of the land, they're gonna want to kill me. I can't stand up for them, against them. And but of course the effect was the opposite. They went to Bethel, and the narrative says that the dread of them went before them. That's exactly what happens at Jericho. They go in for the conquest. The only difference is they didn't kill everyone in Shechem, they just killed the males. But there's clear anticipation of the story of the conquest there. So you have the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his household, and all the elders of the land of Egypt. Go up to the northeast, go up to Canaan as a state procession into Canaan to bury a slave. Boy, will they regret leaving everyone behind.
Yeah, you almost wonder when I'd be reading this if Pharaoh was afraid that they would just return and stay in the land, and so that's why he sent his servants along with them.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
There's no indication that Pharaoh
No.
has any doubt about Joseph. Joseph clearly has no intent of leaving Egypt. That's going to be clear by the end of the story. What Pharaoh was this? Hard to say, because it's quite a while after he was brought in by the young Pharaoh. Implicit trust, as was just mentioned in Joseph by the Pharaoh. It's all happy, right? They're all going to live happily ever after, the Egyptians and the Hebrews. It's going to be one big happy family. And there went up with him both chariots and horsemen. It was a very good, how much can you labor this point? I mean, it starts right here in verse 7, right here. And now in verse 9, this chariots and horsemen. It was a very great company. So all these Canaanites watching this happen, here comes the Egyptians with chariots and horsemen. But it's not a military campaign. It's a funeral procession. So who are they bringing? Who is this man that they're bringing in this procession? And the answer is one who is not even a native of, who has basically no presence in Canaan. He's moved everyone out. All he has is a cave. That's one of the great ironies of the story of Israel and Egypt. When they left Canaan, they left everything behind. They had nothing there except the promise of God. So this return on Jacob's part is just an expression of trust and faith in the promise of God, because they have no presence there. It's not like they have a people who can guard anything for when they get back. They're going back to Egypt and they're going to be there 400 years. So when they have to come back, they're going to have to take the land. And this right here is like it's like a guarantee. It's like a promise from God. And I think Jacob's absolutely aware of that. That's the point. Jacob really, it's interesting, he eventually did come to know his place in the history of the redemption of Israel, if you want to think of it as redemption, which I do, salvation of Israel. You have capital R redemption and small r redemption, capital S salvation, small s salvation. Capital S salvation is in Christ, but God is always and everywhere in the story of the Bible saving his people. And never is that more obvious than in Egypt in the time of the Exodus, and then during the period of the Judges, when he had every reason in the world. At Exodus chapter 32 with the golden calf, Numbers 14, almost all the stories of Judges. After Solomon dies and they descend into idolatry, he had every reason in the world to abandon that people. And it appeared that he did during the exiles, 587, the two exiles later on when he drove them out of the land, but he didn't really abandon them.
Well, he did threaten to kill them twice. For the start with Moses all over again, so.
Yeah. Moses is the only man who ever argued with God and won. Okay. All right, so that's the story. This is also an indication, this statement, only their children, their flock, there's the guarantee they're coming back.
Mhm.
If probably Joseph would have known that. Joseph would have known he's a smart guy. He's very undervalued as one of the great personalities, one of the great leaders, one of the wisest people, one of the wisest of the wise of the history of Israel. So he would have known to keep Pharaoh's mind at ease, to leave behind. You forgot your money at the store. So you say, hey, I tell you what, I'll run down to my house and get the money. Here's my car keys as a guarantee that I'm going to come back and give you the money. It's that kind of a thing. If reading between the lines.
And why was it important to Pharaoh that they return? Is it because they would take care of his animals or something?
They belong to him. They belong to him.
But they are slaves at this point.
Oh, they certainly are. They never lose that status. That's why when the pharaohs finally died, that Joseph knew, the Egyptians went, why are we treating these slaves with such honor? We're the Egyptians, they're the slaves. So
They didn't oppress them.
not yet. But as soon as they're out of trouble with the famines, well, now they're just slaves. What else are they? They're only here because the Egyptians did them a favor. This family is only here out of the goodness of Pharaoh's heart, so to speak, or as a service to Joseph for what he did. But he doesn't have, they don't, we don't know what they did on behalf of Pharaoh. It's certainly not enough to make them not enough to make them have equal status with the Egyptians. They don't even like
Like when someone comes to our country, they become citizens.
Nothing like that.
Absolutely nothing like that. There's nothing. These people were entirely, what's the word for it? They were ethnically oriented. Egypt was for the Egyptians. Rome was for the Romans. That changed eventually. Athens was for the Greeks. That's how it is.
I have too much of an American.
This whole
We don't have that mindset of the king, and so that makes it hard for us to understand certain aspects of the Bible because the king is running through the pages of the Bible.
Multiculturalism. Rome was very cosmopolitan. It had a lot of different groups and so forth. But Rome was for the Romans. Now, you could become a citizen, a Roman citizen like Paul, even if even though Roman citizenship was a status, not an ethnic group. But that will eventually come back to probably haunt them. But when they went out and conquered, they were conquering for the Romans. This was about enriching the Romans all through the Roman Republic and so forth. When Alexander conquered the Persian Empire, that was on behalf of the Greeks. That's it. His people, he was Macedonian, but
So they didn't get, like you were talking about Roman status, these people didn't get an Egyptian status.
no, they didn't even like the Hebrews. Remember? That's how it started. That's why they're in Goshen. Hey, we'll agree to stay up in Goshen because we know you don't like us. Oh, and Pharaoh says, okay, that's good. I don't want any trouble. Okay, this can work out now. That's the way I read it between the lines. When they came to the threshing floor of Atad, I have no idea what that is, which is beyond the Jordan. They lamented there with a very great and grievous lamentation, and he made a mourning for his father 7 days. So let's take a look at this. This is interesting language. Where is beyond the Jordan?
It would be somewhere in the areas of where Reuben and, Manasseh and Gad.
We need another map. What's my favorite map?
You ask that every week. Why don't you just
I don't know.
Give
give it a new name, my favorite
Which is the map? Which one is the map that I?
That's what I do.
Which one is the map that I like? So Egypt is down. Egypt is down here. Here's Egypt down here. So they're going to go back like this to get to Canaan. But look what it says. They come up like this. However they did it, they're down here in Egypt. They come up and it's beyond. They're beyond the Jordan. So they come in to Canaan like this, which is exactly how they're going to come in for the conquest.
Yes.
And it's going to get everybody's attention, just like in the conquest. They come in, and then there's going to be the inhabitants of the land of the Canaanites saw the mourning on the threshing floor of Atad. They said, "This is a grievous mourning by the Egyptians." Gets the undivided attention of the peoples. But this, I don't know why they do this. Why not just walk up like this to where? Because I don't know. I have no idea.
I don't know.
But it's
That's the way the 10 spies came in. They came
Yeah.
in this way, and then after the spies said, no, we can't take the land, and the guy said, okay, they're gonna wander the, and the other people that decided, well, we're gonna follow God all of a sudden because God cursed them. They decided to go that way too, but in the end, God had them directed from around.
Nathan.
On the side.
Nathan.
Is it also the way that Abraham came in? The promised land?
I don't-
I'm not sure. It seems like he came in from north to south.
There's no hint that happened. It just simply said, "Go forth from your country," and he headed out.
But when Jacob returned, he may have come that way.
He did come that way. He was over here because he renamed Mahanaim, which is over on the other side of the Jordan. So I don't remember where, but
I'm curious, now if the threshing floor of Atad, or how you say that, is somewhere near the foothills of Mount Pisgah.
well, this is all you get, and you have to try not to read too much into it, but get as much out of it as you can.
Can you imagine any other child of Jacob being a leader of Israel besides Jacob?
Well,
He actually becomes,
he eventually gets there.
yeah,
And the reason he gets there is because he eventually understands. Because remember what he said to Pharaoh about his life. I'm 100 and whatever I'm years old, and few and miserable have been my years, and I haven't attained the age of my father. It's like this, that's where he was when he came into Egypt. But now he understands. He can see the genius of the plan, the craftsmanship in his family, exactly the same way Joseph will pronounce it in just a few verses. So I think that's the difference. And how this family, just like in the Judges, how this family, not like it's raining, managed to keep it together through all this time and all the inter-family squabbling and so on and so forth is just flat out the miracle of God, just like during the period of the judges. Okay,
You probably covered this, but, the reason that they became slaves, you probably have already covered this, you know, in, what is the reason they became slaves?
in Egypt,
In Egypt, yes.
because they had no choice. Because Joseph was a slave, because they sold him. The reason they became slaves is because, what's the Christian word for karma? What you sow, you will also reap. Is that the same thing? I don't know. But yeah, let's stay away from the Eastern religions. What a man sows, he shall also reap. Boy, did they reap. They sold Joseph in as a slave. After a dream by Joseph saying, you will all bow down to me. That's the interpretation. And sure enough, in order for them to survive, they had to go to Egypt to be fed and become slaves. That's how they became slaves. So all under the craftsmanship of God, engineering of people.
Yeah.
Let's see. Thus his sons did for him as he had commanded them. Man, they're spending a long time on a burial, aren't they? Would we spend this much time on a burial? They're a really important burial in the history of Israel. This is an important burial for the history of Israel, because that land that Abraham bought, whenever he bought it a long time ago, that was just sitting there without being discussed, and I said it at the time, was the 10th stake in the ground. That was their first land. That was their first deed of land. That was going to be home, prefiguring the conquest. And now Jacob says, yep, I'm going back to what is going to be the ancestral homeland. Before it's an ancestral homeland, all we have is a cave and a few bodies. That's it.
I can't think of any other burial in all of scripture that gets this much ink, even Christ. I mean, if you add up the 4 gospel accounts, you might get, but the burial part is usually just 2 or 3 verses per gospel account.
Well, and the big difference there is the burial is not, it's up from the grave
Yeah, you're right.
that matters there. So,
This is also spiked with Egyptian culture, isn't it?
Yep.
I mean, state of the body was really important.
yeah, their sense of Laura's point about the Egyptian presence in this burial narrative. They're not like us. I've said this before. Our future in our minds we're a very transient, mobile, nomadic people. We're apartment dwellers. I lived in an apartment. I did not own a house until 2002. I was 40. We're nomadic. That's how we lived. Even sometimes married with kids, from apartment to apartment. Move. I don't know what the mobility of our nation is right now. What percent of people move from one state to another every year? It's remarkable. They would know nothing about that. What mattered to them was roots and blood. And so they were now what they were in the past and what they're going to be in the future. And that line of descent and continuity was absolutely critical to them. That's why Abraham was so, I don't know what you want to call it, upset. What's the right word? I'll just use it. Preoccupied, an understatement. Overwhelmingly preoccupied with who his heir was going to be. That's what he cared about. Isaac, I don't have an heir. God, you've given me all these blessings. It's all for nothing. I don't have an heir. Eliezer, one in my house, he's my heir. No. So I'm going to take care of that because it mattered that much to him. And he's long since passed. Same thing with Jacob. He's bringing my people back to the land of Canaan, and I'm going to be there with them in spirit, if not in body. That's the point.
Even to this day, in Eastern culture, mourning is a much bigger thing than it is to us in the Western culture. I mean, they pay for people to mourn
Yeah.
somebody that's died. How would you like to be a paid mourner?
Did you already say what you wanted to say? I forgot. What did you say?
You're talking about the lake back, I don't know which direction.
Oh, yeah, that, yeah. Okay. Sometimes I don't let go of things. It's stick in my head. It's me in trouble all the time. Let's see. For his sons carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah. How many times are you going to say it? To the east of Mamre, which Abraham bought. Here we go. With the field from Ephron the Hittite to possess it as a burying place. Let's see. Hittite. Was it the last chapter? That was the last chapter. Well, and then like 3 times in the previous chapter. After he buried his father, Joseph returned to Egypt and his brothers and all who had gone up with him to bury his father. So there's no delay. They don't hang around. Joseph hasn't been back in who knows how many years. Doesn't matter. He ain't hanging around. He's going back to Egypt. Let's see. Check my notes. Let's see. Okay, I said everything in my notes. And when Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they get nervous. Maybe Joseph was just being nice until our father died. They said, it may be that Joseph will hate us and pay us back for all the evil that we did to him. So they acknowledge it. So they sent a message to Joseph saying, they sent a message. It's not like they walk into his house. So he still got the status. Saying, your father gave this, your father, not our father, your father gave this command before he died. Say to Joseph, please forgive the transgression of your brothers and their sin because they did evil to you. Now, please forgive the transgression of the servants of the God of your father. We'll get back to that in a second. Well, why wouldn't Jacob just say to Joseph, please forgive? Assuming he knew. Maybe he didn't know. If he didn't know, then this is just another deception. If Jacob did know, well, maybe he did do it. I don't have any idea, but they're still concerned after all this. They're still not fully understanding what Joseph figured out and Jacob already figured out. And so, they're on their own. Now that the father isn't there, are we back to where we were standing before Joseph when we didn't know who he was? And he can do anything he wants to us? Because why wouldn't he take retribution now that the father, maybe he's just been waiting for our father to die so that he can do what he wanted to do all along. I don't know.
It almost catches me that instead of them going themselves, they sent the messenger, Joseph.
Yeah.
And maybe this was the roots of the term, don't kill the messenger. I don't know. But they were too afraid themselves to go.
Or they didn't, that's not how it worked.
Yeah.
You didn't just march into Joseph anytime you wanted. But anyway, they do acknowledge what they did right here. No question about it. Please forgive twice. Please forgive. So it's your father gave the command, not our father. And to forgive the transgressions of the servants of the God of your father. Placing themselves under the God of Jacob. Well, how do you say no? How do you say, no, I'm not going to forgive? I'm not going to forgive you when you're one of the servants of the God of my father. So I don't know how much deception there is here. It's understandable, but what's interesting to me is that they're still that worried about it. Joseph wept when they spoke to him. It's not the first time. Now he seems to be, they appear to have gone into him right here. They were speaking to him.
Yeah.
So send a message to Joseph. We would like to see him about this issue. He invites them in. They say what they want to say. And you have this rehearsal of the previous family reunion when Joseph broke down and told him who he was. And there was that moment with Judah, when Judah said, let the boy, let the boy go, I will become your slave. And it's just caused Joseph to break down. So you have that here again.
And once again, they're bound down.
That's right. And I think it's going to be explicit in a minute, isn't it? Let's see. His brothers also came and fell down before him and said, behold, we are your servants. I mean, how many times can you have that dream come to pass where the the sun, moon, and the whatever it was, the stars will bow down before him? But Joseph said, do not fear. No, you're not my servants. Do not fear. Am I in the place of God? As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, not for me. He didn't mean it good for me, but to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. And even more importantly, that the covenant be saved, which I think is exactly what he has in mind. So we talked about all these threats to the covenant promise. They're all through the Bible. It's all through Genesis, one after another. God, just like in Judges and the Exodus, when everything on the ground would indicate that it's all going to fall, it's all falling apart, and God can't possibly get us out of this one, or save his plan this time. Absolutely, he can. That's the story of redemption. God is in the business. Salvation and redemption are impossible. They're impossibilities. That's exactly what God does. He brings about the impossible. He's the only one who can do it. And so this is going to end with them in Egypt, which is going to now be a point of salvation for the people of Israel and incubation, but eventually become a grave threat to the covenant promise till God comes back down and drives them out of Egypt and takes them to Canaan to inherit the promise.
This is perhaps the greatest statement about the sovereignty of God ever.
Yeah, it's
It really is.
out of a man who, like I've said, is one of the wisest.
Exactly.
There's Solomon. He never fell. Solomon fell.
Yeah.
I might give the nod to Joseph. For a man who understood the plan of God, David, I mean, I don't know. Not many of them. But that is one of the great statements right there. God overcomes all evil. Working however you want to think of it.
Say 28. I mean, that's basically it.
So do not fear. I will provide for you and your little ones. Thus he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. So he leaves no doubt.
It also just fulfills the promise that for the prophecy that God told Abraham that they're going to be in Egypt for 400 years.
Yes, we'll go back and maybe we'll visit that after as a wrap up here. So now we're going to deal with Joseph's death. Like I said, this book ends with 2 deaths. It's a strange way for a book to end on a very happy note with a people in slavery and the 2 great leaders dead. But it just ends almost joyously. So Joseph remained in Egypt, he and his father's house, and Joseph lived 110 years. And Joseph saw Ephraim's children of the 3rd generation. The children also of Machir, no idea, the son of Manasseh, were counted as Joseph's own. So he does probably to them what Jacob did to him. And Joseph said to his brothers, I'm about to die. Whoever's still alive, I don't know. I'm about to die, but God will visit. Now, the book is going to end now with a restatement. We'll go back and look at Genesis 15 with a restatement that it was always, everything that was happening all through this was always about that covenant promise of Genesis chapter 15, which is what? In the Israelite mind, what is the covenant promise? The land. Forget about all that other stuff. To the Israelites, land, posterity, future, inheritance. That's what it was about. And that's what Egypt's about. And that's what they're thinking about. To us, it's got a larger picture. But for them, it's God fulfilling his promise to Abraham that he would preserve his people and give them a portion in the land of Canaan, period.
That's what the war's been over the last,
And it's never stopped since.
no,
Never, and it never will. But here's the statement. God will visit you. What chapter will he do that? Of the Bible.
Chapter 2,
When will he appear?
Exodus 2 or 3.
Exodus 3. He will appear. He will drive in his own way Moses out of Egypt. Maybe prefiguring the conquest. I don't know. Or prefiguring the Exodus. And then he will have a divine appointment with Moses, and he will drive Moses to the very bush where he will have that appointment. And that happens in Exodus chapter 3. God will visit you through Moses. He doesn't say that. And bring you up out of this land to the land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. And for the first time, you get that formula. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I think that's the first time. Somebody can look that. And that will now be a fixture in Israelite tradition to this day. Biblical tradition. Then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, I repeat, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here. Because I understand now. I haven't forgot I was wrong. He didn't cause me to forget my family. I was a salvation. He used me to save my family. So I'm going back with my family. I'm not going to remain in Egypt. Even though I'll be dead. Because that's how we roll around here. We're not modern Americans. So Joseph died being 110 years old. They embalmed him and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. And will he remain there?
He won't remain in the coffin in Egypt because he'll go to Israel.
They're gonna bring
They
it.
bring in bones. They talk about that in the book of Joshua. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. He's the only one of the patriarchs of Jacob that got buried in the land. Well, I mean, Abraham and Isaac, but they were brought back to the land for burial.
Exodus 13, Moses took the bones of Joseph. For Joseph had made the sons of Israel solemnly swear, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones with you from here. To the last detail.
What's amazing, this is probably 300 years later. Or so,
Yeah.
maybe longer, but, that all of a sudden they're, so it had to be a guy, God impressed to find somebody to remember his bones. Because they would, after 300 years, they would have remembered.
Yes.
They're supposed to do that.
Yeah.
Let's see.
We'll talk about Israelite consciousness, Israelite religious belief during the period of this enslavement when we get to Exodus. But here's what it was all about all along. This is the covenant promise to Abraham. Know for certain that your offspring will be sojourners. I can't take it. Pardon me, Phil.
You gotta go back to the New American Standard.
For the moment. I have it. I've read it so many times, I've kind of got it in my mind. Know for certain that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs. That's a strange way to start a promise that he's going to get the land that they're on right now, where they will be enslaved and oppressed 400 years. But I will also judge the nation whom they will serve, and afterward they will come out with many possessions. Then, verse 16, in the fourth generation, they will return here, for the iniquity of the Amorite is not yet complete. So there's the statement, and we've just reached the point where they are set up to begin that period of slavery. And that's what's going to happen between Genesis chapter 50 and Genesis chapter 51, also known as Exodus chapter 1. And when you turn the page, so you just saw Genesis 50, when you turn the page, oops. Look at this. So here's the end of chapter 50. So Joseph being 110 years old, they embalmed him and placed him in a coffin in Egypt. Exodus 1. Now these are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt with Jacob. take the chapters out. Take the names of the books out and just make it a continuous narrative. Would you ever know you just turn the page on a new book? This is one story with a 400-year gap or so, sometimes, or 300 and some odd year gap. It just, they leave out that in-between part, which we know nothing about as far as Israelite life. We know some things about Egyptian life. But this is one continuous narrative and it should be read that way. But this is what it was all about, this promise in Genesis 15. Which is why you never graduate from it in the Bible, in Bible study. There's certain things you never graduate from, which is one of which is Genesis 1 and 2, which is why we talked about it so much. You never leave it in the Bible. We can do that sometime. I did a lot of it already, but if you walk through and hit every reference to the creator or creation or the maker of all things and so forth, or heaven and earth or something like that, it's too many to count in the New Testament as well. But then Genesis chapter 15 begins the story. Genesis 12 begins the story of redemption. Small r, capital R, begins the story of salvation from a certain perspective. Small s, capital S, that will continue on all the way through to the day of redemption with the return of Christ, with the return of the King and the resurrection of the dead. And that's one continuous narrative, weaving its way through all these books, 66 books, with one grand divine narrative over the top of it, where God was doing something in the midst of all the human doings. So that's the end of the book of Genesis.
Talking about what you were talking about earlier about the chapters, basically Genesis means beginning, so it's beginning of life and then the beginning of Israel.
Yeah.
It comes down to it.
Yeah, I think a better name for it might be Origins, because there's so many. It's an origin story. It's an origin story 5 or 6 different ways. There's all kinds of origin stories in it, which is why cities are renamed. How did that city get its name? Bethel, Mahanaim. There's that kind of thing. The first time they went here, so it's not just the Genesis. The word Genesis at the top seems to imply, it leads you to believe that Genesis is about Genesis 1. Beginnings meaning Genesis 1, but really it's the beginnings of it's the beginnings of Israel. And Genesis 1 plays an important role in that. Israelite, well, idolatry eventually, but it's supposed to be worship.
Beginnings of redemption.
Yes. So we'll stop there, 10:15. Not much of a wrap up, but we got there. And we're going to talk about the Bible. Sounds stupid. Over the summer, we're going to talk about. I'll show you the outline, but we're going to talk about kind of the history of the Bible itself and how we got it. We've done this before, but Phil and I talked about it, and he thought it was a good idea. So I'll show you the outline of that, and hopefully you find that interesting. It's one of the things that I'm pretty equipped to talk about without being too risky in my knowledge. So,
And for the summer session, we will be meeting over.
and we'll be meeting in the other building. So Nate, Naomi, thanks for participating all through this study from a distance. I appreciate that.
Next week will be a Rumson.
Yeah.
We'll meet over there.
Good job, Gary.
Thank you. Hope you come back for the summer.
Thank you, Gary.
We'll see you. You too, Stacy.
Definitely.
All right.